Welcome to the Knowledge Management Podcast in Africa, where groundbreaking conversations shape the future of knowledge across the continent. Join us as we bring together leading experts and thought leaders to explore innovative strategies, tackle challenges, and drive transformative change in how knowledge is harnessed and utilized in African context. Stay tuned as we dive in. In episode 6 of the Knowledge Management Podcast in Africa, we are privileged to have Mr. Omondi Yudah as our guest. He is a PhD student and with extensive experience in implementing knowledge management practices among smallholder dairy farmers in Kenya. This episode aims to explore how these practices are enhancing productivity, sustainability, and contributing to the broader agricultural and development sector in Africa. And so the main objective of this conversation will basically be to delve into the specific knowledge management practices adopted by smallholder dairy farmers, their impact on agricultural productivity and sustainability, and also we'll be looking at the broader implications for the development sector in Africa. The goal is to provide listeners with actionable insights and practical examples of how knowledge management can drive positive change in agriculture. And so, Mr. Omondi, I've done a brief introduction, but I'll also give you the floor to just in maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute introduce yourself to our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Omondi Yudah. As you've been introduced, I'm a passionate knowledge manager, and my area of specialization is knowledge management with a specific interest in agriculture. And more importantly, we are looking at the implementation of knowledge management in smallholder rural dairy farming. This research is basically towards smallholder rural dairy farmers. But in a nutshell, we will want to see how knowledge management is implemented and how the uptake of knowledge management is in the rural setting within parts of Africa. And maybe to generalize, we would want to see how that can be done in the rural section, because we've realized that smallholders are becoming the economic movers in most of these developing countries. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. I think thank you so much for that introduction. And so let me ask this: why is knowledge management particularly important for smallholder farmers in the rural areas, just like you mentioned?
We want to start from a point. We would want to appreciate that most of the agricultural activities, and more so dairy farming, is knowledge intensive. That means that for a farmer who is a dairy farmer to be more productive, he needs myriad of knowledge, and therefore he will require precision in the knowledge uptake and also knowledge implementation. And because of that, then it means that the core activity that a farmer will always be endeavoring to do is to have the right knowledge so that it can help him, implement, or it will help him to apply so that he can ultimately get the good results, or rather good yield, because again, as I've said, knowledge agriculture is knowledge intensive. So in a nutshell, we are saying that in dairy farming, we will need knowledge. We will want to acquire this knowledge, the knowledge that we need, specific knowledge that we need to implement the daily chores in our farm. And then after acquiring this knowledge, then we need to a greater extent create knowledge, share this knowledge far and wide, and also retain this knowledge within the disposals of the farmer, and ultimately utilize this knowledge. So in a nutshell, this is what knowledge management is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you did mention that agriculture is knowledge intensive, which I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you on. But also like to inquire, what are some of the key knowledge management practices currently being used by the smallholder dairy farmers in Kenya? I mean, with those you've researched on, those you are aware of, or you have knowledge about.
One, the knowledge intensive practices that they usually engage in knowledge acquisition. They acquire knowledge from experts, from seasoned farmers, from these people who have been in the most experienced people. So first of all, there's that aspect of knowledge acquisition. So they will acquire knowledge differently from different spheres so that it can help them. And then secondly, after them acquiring this knowledge, they would engage in a way of sharing and interacting with the knowledge. So you would find practices which I'm going to highlight later, that they are practices where they would want to share and exchange knowledge so that they can strengthen the knowledge. And then you would also see that there are practices that would want to retain the knowledge that they have acquired and also shared. So they have practices that would want to retain knowledge in the rural setup. And then ultimately we will see that there is implementation or utilization of this knowledge in their day-to-day practices, agricultural practices. So those are the major practices, knowledge management practices, that are usually undertaken by farmers.
Okay. And I want to also believe, thank you for sharing that. I would also want to believe that these practices are implemented at a grassroots level.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. And so how has these practices impacted the productivity and sustainability of smallholder dairy farms? Has it had any significant influence on productivity? Has it decreased, increased, or has there been any significant change in productivity levels when it comes to adopting knowledge management practices in what they do on the farms?
To a greater extent, yes, it has really impacted on productivity. And maybe I can itemize the aspects of productivities that
Sure, you can.
knowledge management directly impacts. You know, because of knowledge management, there is improved daily productivity, and this improved daily productivity is based on the interaction between the farmers with the best practices. They have best practice. They interact with the best practices. They interact with the lesson learned as they exchange, or rather share, knowledge with experts and seasoned farmers. So one, it has improved productivity because farmers are emulating best practices. Two, it is making farmers to be more informed. So when you have a more informed farmer, a more knowledgeable farmer, then it means that there are several aspects which are very important for instance, in dairy farming, like understanding the proper nutrition, understanding the housing, the healthcare. All these aspects are important. So with knowledge management, it enables farmers to be more informed and more knowledgeable. Three, I want to talk about mitigating risks. That because farmers who engage in knowledge management, and of course now because they engage in knowledge management at a higher level, then it means that they will acquire knowledge. And when we're talking about acquiring knowledge, we are talking about acquiring knowledge from the best practices, and also acquiring knowledge from the lesson learned from their mistakes that they've made. So with the mixture of the two, it will help the farmers to mitigate the challenges or the risks that they might encounter. And then we will also want to look at it from this dimension, that knowledge management will enable the farmers to develop their capacity. It develops their capacity in terms of the skills, the technical know-how. Once you acquire knowledge and you are in a position to interact with the knowledgeable people who are, for instance, experts, or for instance, seasoned farmers, then it means that you are imbibing, or rather you are acquiring this knowledge, which is going to be part of you. And this is a skill that over time will develop your capacity. And then I will also want to say that with the uptake of knowledge management and the continuous use of knowledge management, we will find that sharing knowledge between and among the rural community enables people to learn collectively. And once you have a collective learning, then we're having a community that can develop, because they're not learning as an individual, but they're learning as a group. And then last but not the least, the other impact that knowledge management has brought is that because of the issues and the changes and the dynamicity of the situation, the current situations, talk about environmental situation, talk about the way things are changing in the world, then it means that we need to be abreast with much of the knowledge that comes from different quarters. Now, with the implementation or the implementation of knowledge management, then it means that most of these farmers will be in a position to get knowledge coming from all these other directions, and will make them resilient to the changes that are coming. And these changes are there to stay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Omondi. Are there any specific examples or case studies that you can use to buttress this impact you just mentioned?
Yes. You see, when I was doing my research, I realized that most of these rural smallholder dairy farmers, they really don't have a direct connection with the global sphere. They really don't have that. But because of the way they are together, their togetherness, there's a way you will find somebody who has in one way or the other is exposed, or has ever benchmarked with a farm outside that place. So when they come together and then they share the knowledge, you will realize that these farmers actually are having the productivity is going higher. And a case in point, there's a farmer who said that he's learned a lot, not from experts, but from people who are within their local leaders. And these local leaders have had interfaces with other farmers from outside. Now, you see, meaning that they are cognizant of the fact that the knowledge that they get from people who are exposed it can actually change their way of doing things. And that is why I'm saying the first point was that it will enable you to improve productivity. You'll have knowledge. And then again, as they interact with again, we will see that even in the rural areas, there are extension services that, as they interact with extension officers, as they interact with the local leaders, these people develop the capacity and they develop the skill. And you'll wonder, how did this person have this much skill, yet he is deep in the village? Only to realize it is because of the implementation of knowledge management, which will enable them to acquire and share knowledge and implement this knowledge.
Thank you so much. I think you've articulated the massive impact knowledge management has had on the smallholder dairy farmers, and particularly when it comes to sharing of knowledge, being it indigenous knowledge, knowledge from experts, and also forming communities of practice to better enhance the work that they do. But in doing this, I want to ask if have you in any way experienced any challenges or barriers that these smallholder farmers face when it comes to implementing effective knowledge management practices?
There are myriad of challenges. I can tell you, these farmers have a lot of challenges, but all in all, challenges are part of life. Now, just to mention and putting it into context within the rural setting, I realized that there is over reliance on traditional knowledge. So they rely on the traditional knowledge that they found there, and it has been there for quite some time. So indigenous knowledge takes precedence. And because they over rely on the indigenous knowledge, it becomes very difficult for them to uptake the exogenous, or rather the scientific knowledge, which has been tried and tested. Why? Because they also have that stringent mentality of not invented here thinking, that if something has not been created there, if they have never seen something happening, they have never seen a person using this new technology, and it has never worked. So for them, it becomes very difficult for them to take such. And I've also seen that I don't know how I'm going to frame it, But there's the competition, the aspect of competition among farmers, because in the rural setting they have small collecting sites where dairy farmers will collect their milk, and most of these are run by cooperative society. So you find that there are several cooperative societies, and these cooperative societies are run, or they're domiciled in an area where you find that within one area, one farmer is tethered towards one kind of cooperative society, the other in another cooperative society. So because of the competition, you'll find that some of the farmers would want to hoard knowledge, because it's like if we share, it means that we this corporate society is will not be performing better than the other. So that is another very serious problem, that there is knowledge hoarding. And then there's also this feeling, sometimes I think it comes with the way, the culture and how people do things. People fear sharing something that they're not sure, and sometimes they fear sharing because they don't know the outcome of what they are going to share, if it's really going to work. So maybe somebody has knowledge, but he does not know the implication. If I'm going to use it, how is it going to come out? So um, bordering that, there's also politics, local politics, which is very divisive. At the local politics, people taking different factions, and then they have very tough. They have very tough backing of their political faces. So because of that stringent and not conducive environment, then it means that there's the culture of being together is limited. And knowledge sharing is usually domiciled in the culture, that we need to have a culture of trusting each other. But because of the divisive politics, then people are not trusting each other, and therefore knowledge does not flow freely among members. Just to mention a few, but there are many other. We can also talk about, there's also a very big gap between the local farmers, the local smallholder farmers, and the experts, agricultural officers, the extension officers. And this big gap is usually occasioned by high illiteracy level. So sometimes you even fear approaching. Just to mention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think one revealing aspect of what you just shared is the over reliance on indigenous knowledge, and the reluctance to uptake scientific knowledge. I think it's something my mind didn't really go to. I think it's a big revelation. And so, how are these challenges being addressed or mitigated? And has there been any practical solutions that have been proposed to address some of these challenges that you just mentioned?
There are several undertakings, but one, as I have highlighted, you've seen that one of the issues that is dividing, that is creating a hostile environment, is the divisive culture, the divisive politics, and advocacy, the advocacies, and civil education. This is something that is ongoing. We are having civil education, and most of the farmers are taken through these processes. And mostly during, as I was traversing the area, I realized that during the market days, we will see such. You'll see have meetings by the roadsides, and within these meetings, people will be talking about that. I've seen the leadership within the area and leadership within the agricultural realm. They've taken it up, and they are actually encouraging people to uptake and to see how best they can get knowledge, which is to them, they think it's foreign, so that they can take this and then they can implement and see its yield. And I'm seeing also they are encouraged. There's the encouragement and also training people to uptake technology, because technology is one of the things that can help us even in acquiring this knowledge, sharing this knowledge. Though we have challenges in terms of infrastructure, but People are encouraged. And then people are also, there are several small meetings called barazas. The small meetings called barazas where people will address issues. There are issues within the village. And within these meetings, people are encouraged to live in harmony. And living in harmony actually translates to having a conducive environment where we can trust each other. And when you trust each other, it will be easier for you to share knowledge.
Thank you so much. You did mention of how technology is being leveraged to enhance the KM among the smallholder dairy farmers. Are there any innovative tools or platforms that are particularly effective that you've seen so far?
Yes. But I have also to say this. Technology goes with literacy, both technology
Okay.
literacy and academic literacy. You'll realize that one of the challenges in the rural setup is that the literacy level is very low. And because of the literacy level is very low, even the technology literacy is also lower than that. But however, with the small number of people who are literate technologically and also literate academically, there are some platforms that are used. There's one of the platform that I found very interesting called Ndume Digital, which is an app that farmers use, and it is usually used. This app is usually used by farmers to more so in AI, artificial intelligence. Artificial insemination. That we can verify the farmer where the farmer is. It can help you to verify when your animal is on heat, and then this app also provides a method where you can communicate directly to the veterinary officer by sending a message. And you see and within the app also it provides for a leeway to have small videos that will enable you to see how things are happening, or how to implement or utilize a specific chore or activity. So I found that very interesting, the Ndume Digital, which again, I want to emphasize, it is not used rampantly. It's used by the few who are techno-literate. And then there's also another application that is usually used by the circles, not actually the circles, the collecting points, the milk collecting points within the rural setup. This app is called Maziwa Plus daily software. It will enable us to know which farmer actually produces this much of milk. What is the problem? What is the pH of the milk? And if there are problems with the milk, it will actually pick up, and then it sends the messages to the respective farmers, and also it retains the message within the system, so that even the management within these cooperatives or the centers will actually trace that this farmer brought this, and this milk has this, and it has this. These are the challenges. I think these are the two apps that I will say are innovative apps that actually help. If it would be implemented by the bigger population of the farmers, then I think it will be better.
Thank you so much. I have one question. I think I would like to direct more to the development sector. I want to know the ways in which the KM practices of the smallholder dairy farmers have contributed to the broader agriculture and development sector in Kenya and probably to East Africa.
When we zoom at agriculture, and then we zoom at smallholder, and more importantly, the rural setup, knowledge management has helped to develop the capacity of rural smallholder farmers. In this sense, that within knowledge management, you will find that some of the practices of knowledge management will be like we will be having things like benchmarking, we'll be having things like, trainings, we'll be having things like coaching, we'll be having, we would have field farm demonstrations. This actually develops the capacity of a farmer, which actually contributes to the productivity of the farmer. Two, as I have highlighted previously, that knowledge management, within the knowledge management will encourage people not to fear mistakes. That you can make mistakes, but it's very important that you make a mistake so that you can learn from it. But again, you can also learn from the best practices somewhere. And because of that, then it means with the knowledge management, it will be easier for us to mitigate the risks that are prevailing in terms of agriculture. That even the things that we are the risks that we'll be encountering, we would have, in one way or the other, pick them as lesson learned, or we have seen the best practices somewhere of how that can be done. And then, three, we are saying that this knowledge management will enable, because you realize that when we go to the rural smallholders, we say that they have capitalized on indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge. So it will help us to have a more comprehensive knowledge base, because we can get the knowledge, the traditional knowledge, which and the indigenous knowledge, which is productive enough, and then we can have an hybrid with the indigenous knowledge, or rather the scientific knowledge. This will help us to have a knowledge hub which is more comprehensive and can actually help it can help the farmers to attain their goal and increase their yield. Last but not the least, with the knowledge management initiative, there's high chances that we will be having networks, community of practices. You will be having farmers who come together because maybe they were in a exhibition, they were in a training together, they were in a meeting, they were in a field demonstration. So with that, we are linking people, we are creating a network, and this network ultimately, because it ends up creating a community of practice which is broader, and within the community of practice there's a lot that is usually done.
Thank you so much. You've touched on a number of things. I'm more interested in the knowledge how, but I would want to ask this question: How can these practices be scaled up or replicated in other regions? I ask this because I've realized, and I'm from West Africa, that the uptake of knowledge management isn't that much in our side of Africa as compared to Eastern and the South. I don't know if you are aware of that, but if not, I would want to ask: do you think how do you think these practices can be scaled up or replicated in other regions, given the significance it has for the agriculture and development sector as a whole?
Yes, it is good that you've asked that question, because one of the reasons why maybe replication of this knowledge is very difficult is because even the generation of this knowledge is a problem. Now, what needs to happen, and how this can be done, is to intensify research in this area. That maybe we still lagging behind in terms of more research in agriculture and knowledge management. So when much of this is written or documented, I think people are going to take interest in it. And then we develop much of a publicity, so that much of the knowledge that has been acquired, or much of the knowledge, much of the research that has been done, are in the public domain. And I'm thinking with that, we will be having a number of people who will be interested in the same. And then there's the issue of having, I think, local, national, and regional knowledge bases. And then generally, we have people contributing to this basis. When that is done, there's contribution. There are contributions from East Africa. There are contributions from Western Africa. There are contribution from North Africa. There's contribution from South Africa. Maybe, even though in one section, we will be having not that big contribution, but there's a lot that is going to be learned from the knowledge bases. That if we can have a knowledge base, and then within this knowledge base, we have populated the knowledge base with even the lessons, the challenges that people are having. We have populated it with the best practices. I'm thinking we will bring many people on board because we will be having we will be having high traffic of people accessing to this basis. And I'm thinking it's going to open the mind and also open people so that they can be part of it. And then I will also emphasize, because sometimes, but the biggest challenge is it needs facilitation, benchmarking. That
Sure.
much as it is expensive and a resource, it demands that we have the requisite resources. But having exposures without, this actually helps us to scale up. That we can have forums such as this. These forums will help us to open up and see things from different dimensions. And once
Okay.
this happens, it means that we will be at a higher pedestal of seeing things from a larger view. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so I was going to ask, I think my last question was going to be on recommendations you would give to policymakers and development organizations and farmers to further enhance KM practices. But I think you've already touched on that one. And so I'll be focusing on the future outlook for KM in smallholder dairy farming in Kenya. What are the emerging trends you are foreseeing? And what do you think the future outlook looks like? Is it good? Is it encouraging? Is it something that we should embrace?
I will say that in the current situation, the picture is not good. We're still struggling with teething issues, and more so when I'm talking about smallholders, because again we want to zoom it there. There are several challenges, small challenges, which are really bedeviling the smallholder farmers. So we still need a lot of advocacy, like I've said, civil education, so that we can move from now the current phase where we are. We know that knowledge management, okay, it has been adopted by to a smaller level where we are not supposed to be. But given the benefits that are accrued by what knowledge is bringing, looking at those farmers or looking at agricultural ventures which are which have adopted and implemented knowledge management to a full-blown scale, and then seeing the productivity, it encourages farmers to move towards that direction. I know we are now not there. I know that the things are not looking fine, and we are having challenges, economic challenges that is global. But I'm very passionate and definite that in the near future we are going to move and upscale towards full-blown knowledge management, because it has advantages and there are benefits that are accrued by adopting and implementing them.
Thank you so much. I think I've exhausted most of my questions, and so I'll give you the floor to and maybe touch on one or few things that you would want to speak on that I didn't ask in my questions. I would also give you the chance to touch on other aspects of your research that you feel will be relevant to our audience as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would want to talk about why knowledge management in agriculture and more importantly in dairy farming. I started by saying that agriculture is knowledge intensive. It is important for us to understand that any agricultural endeavor will require you to have pertinent knowledge about what needs to be done within that sphere. Now, in dairy farming, we've seen that people would want to have knowledge about respective kind of information, or rather knowledge, skills, and expertise, which is very important and key. So if at all you want to venture into agriculture, just know that knowledge management is part of you. You will always want to get knowledge about, if it's in dairy farming, about animal husbandry, feeding, breeding, disease prevention, farm management, access to information, which is market information and all that, financial information. So, in a nutshell, you can't survive without knowledge management. You'll have to have knowledge management. And again, you'll have to implement strategies. And these strategies are supposed to be in line with the current situation on the ground. I know the challenges are different. Several sections or several regions within Africa have their prevailing challenges, but it's important that we have strategies, and these strategies needs to be anchored on the people, the people within within the nation or within the locality. And one of the issue that is coming out is the culture. I've looked at it from a different dimension. I've realized that culture defines how people do things. Every society has its own culture. So we would want to look at this culture as an enabler. So every time we face issues which are cultural in nature that are impeding maybe knowledge sharing or knowledge acquisition, we would want to see how we can embrace the culture so that the culture can enable us to open up and share it and help us to move to higher pedestal. I think I want to stop there, and maybe there are questions or something.
Sure. Thank you so much. So you can't survive without knowledge management. I like that phrase. I think I've exhausted all my questions. I would want to thank you so much for sharing these invaluable insights into KM practices among smallholder dairy farmers in Kenya. And let me extend it to, let's say, East Africa, highlighting their significant contribution to agriculture and development in Africa. And in this discussion, we've discussed the challenges, innovative solutions, and also the future prospects in the sector. And once again, I would like to thank you for sharing your expertise and enriching our understanding of this crucial topic. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. God bless you too. Thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Knowledge Management Podcast in Africa. We hope today's discussions have provided valuable insights and actionable takeaways for maximizing the potential of your knowledge assets. To stay connected with our community of practice and continue the conversation, join us on LinkedIn at Knowledge Management Professionals in Africa. Don't miss out on being part of the transformative movement shaping the future of knowledge management on the African continent. Until next time, signing off.